Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. Do you still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not add up. Listen to me. Listen to your head. Don't listen to anything they say.
As the 21st century began, human evolution was at a turning point. Natural selection, the process by which the strongest, the smartest, the fastest reproduced in greater numbers than the rest, a process which had once favored the noblest traits of man, now began to favor different traits. Most science fiction of the day predicted a future that was more civilized and more intelligent. But as time went on, things seemed to be heading in the opposite direction, a dumbing down.
Harvard researchers have found children who live in high fluoride areas have significantly lower IQs.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fry.
Researchers found members of Congress, on average, speak at a 10th grade level. Most Americans read at an 8th or 9th grade level.
Look now, I'll talk slow so as you can understand me.
It was just a few thousand years ago that our ancestors were using primitive grunts to communicate.
Hillary's a good leader. I trust Hillary. Hillary is a good leader.
I stand here as a freed slave.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb, for real.
Mankind became stupider at a frightening rate.
You're a white man!
You want to know what I found out? Most of England speaks Americanish.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far.
I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and the Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe that they should, our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. or should help South Africa.
What does that mean?
Mercury containing vaccines may help, not harm kids, according to 2 new studies in the journal Pediatrics.
We now go live to Violence Channel correspondent for Micah Davis at the Extreme Court with highlights on today's trial.
Good to see you in this exercise in transparency and democracy.
Is that what it is?
A great dust bowl had ravaged food supplies, and the #1 movie in the country was called Ass.
If Mr. Trump is suggesting that there is a conspiracy theory, that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. Of course the elections will not be rigged. What does that mean?
Obama, you should run for a 3rd term because we need you.
Obama 3rd term!
How many sides does a triangle have?
Damn, 4.
There's no sides.
What's Osama bin Laden most infamous for?
Osama?
Yeah.
Or Obama?
Osama.
I have no idea who Osama is.
Which state does KFC come from?
What, the chicken? I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay, do you know what KFC stands for?
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
A little further south from that facility, there's a completely separate building where they, get this, change raw sewage water into water people drink.
Why? Like out the toilet?
But Brondo's got what plants crave.
It's got electrolytes.
Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones. But your hair would be bigger.
Infowars.com.
It's a circus, everybody! Look!
Oh, yeah,
Look!
Look at the monkey! Look at the monkey! Look at the monkey!
Oh, I did that on purpose!
We're live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Alex Jones, your host. For the next 2 hours in studio, we have a real treat. Gary Haven, one of my favorite guests, the producer of Amerigeddon, a billionaire, successful entrepreneur here in America, and one of the leading funders of the anti-New World Order movement. And then, of course, we got Steve Quayle, who I've known for 21 years over the phone, in studio with us. And the world's so crazy right now that Steve Quayle normally, who stays out west, out in Montana and places, has actually been flying around with Gary Haven at the controls of his jet, flying himself around the country, speaking to capacity crowds and going on international television programs. And you guys just met with a federal agent about some really important stuff dealing with Stingray and phones. I personally have had multiple of my phones where people go in and start typing and take it over. I had to get rid of my old phone number before it, and then start calling people and sending databases. And then now people I know it's happening. This just happened this weekend when someone I know was just sending someone a message, and then it was sending messages back from their phone saying, do you have this particular drug? And so they were sending it from their phone, and they could see the message had been sent. I guess to have databases just to set everybody up. Just like the DEA admittedly has their parallel construction where they have total access to the NSA. I've had the former technical director of the NSA on, William Benny, just 2 weeks ago about this. And he said they have all of Hillary's emails. They have everything. And he said that it all goes through that database. They're saving it. And the DEA, the IRS, all have access to it. They go in, and then they basically make up a fake investigation and plant evidence when they want to bust you. So when I say the police aren't our enemy, I mean the local cop changing tires, writing tickets, going to domestic disputes. It's a terrible job. They're great men and women on average. They're good people. Our local police departments are good on average. But the DEA, the CIA, a lot of the FBI, it's globalist run now. So you want to get into this big subject. We'll do it the next hour. I'm not really teasing it. You just mentioned it, and you guys were debating how far you could go with it when we were talking. So let's talk about that during some of the breaks. Let's get into the people that said there's no threat of nuclear war. Let's get into what's happening in the economy. Let's cover the waterfront with Gary Haven and Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle of SteveQuayle.com. Steve, it is amazing to have you here with us.
Hey, Alex, this is just a delight. And ladies and gentlemen, for me to come out of Montana, I think Alex put it very succinctly. And the timing of all the events taking place are becoming so problematic, so in our face, that now everything, Alex, you and I used to talk about all the time, still talk about daily for you, daily or weekly when I'm on the radio with you or someone else. But here's the thing. It's in motion. Years ago, we were telling you the day would come when this would be in effect, this would be in effect, and this would be in effect. Now it's all in effect, and people can't deny it. So the urgency, and you rightly picked it up last week when you interviewed me, I have never felt a more urgent time in my spirit. And look, I've been on talk radio 25 years, 9,000 plus hours, interview after interview after interview. But by the time that we're talking about all these things, Alex, we're talking about the headlines. You and I basically spoke into existence years ago. And I don't know of a better, and this is not flattery, it's just a true statement. I've made the statement. I think the InfoWars journalistic and investigative skills are second to none. And that, again, is what I am just proud to say.
Well, I mean, not me.
You've got an amazing team.
Merkel Thalen, who was in Seattle and moved here a few years ago, does an amazing job, is in touch with all the white hat hackers. He broke with the secret documents that Stingray was listening to everybody, watching everybody, and finally proved it, and that they'd also set up private networks of these. And we're basically tracking everybody in real time and putting in their own communication system at Homeland Security so they could shut the web off but still be operating with their web. And so the guy deserves a Pulitzer Prize for that.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the kind of journalists we have, and I will give ourselves the credit. When they know we'll break stuff like that, that is dangerous. But we're willing to do it. And by the grace of God, like Jim Garrison said, we've stayed in the spotlight. I think that's why we've been protected.
Well, absolutely we've been protected. And Gary has basically put his name, his reputation, his financial blessings on the line. And ladies and gentlemen, again, this is what causes people to come out who have a heart for other people. Alex, it's about people. It's about getting them to the point where they're not going to be cannon fodder. And what you brought up about Stingray, just a little bit of information, is years ago, people couldn't, they wouldn't believe that there were assassination algorithms. They didn't believe that the red list, the blue list, and the green list existed.
And that's now admitted.
That's now admitted.
They admit roundup teams. They admit civilian inmate labor camps. They even call it re-education camps in the Army manual.
Absolutely. And so now...
Re-education camps, the Soviet term.
But those are the people that get to live. What most people are losing track of, that quite candidly, Alex, with the very few mouths out there, or mouthpieces, and the broadcast that's out there, we have lost our country internally at any kind of level that I believe political, outside of Donald Trump. And here's where, you know, thank you for all the times you've done.
Please don't thank me.
Yeah, no. Look, let me share this. The thank yous go out there simply because having these guys that are absolutely willing to risk their lives, you just mentioned the guy that deserved a Pulitzer Prize, having Donald Trump saying to the world the things that everyone thinks, but they're too afraid to mention. That's the thing. Fear is the dominant theme, and I believe...
And he's breaking through the fear.
Yep, yep. And so the thing is that when you break the hold of fear, people can think. But the networks, obviously, are the greatest neuro-linguistic programming tool ever created.
When you sit in front of the TV of mainstream media, that is a weapon system. You better be conscious. In fact, I'm going to skip this network break, last one today, because I want to give you guys more time, but I want to inject something here. We come from a perspective of stopping the globalists, being honest, shining a light on it like Paul Revere. Some people that are living in total fear think we're being negative or fear-mongering or fear porn because they think they're helpless and we're trying to demoralize them. No. We don't think you're weak like the globalists do. We know the only chance we've got is for you to know, under a new world order with GMO and chemicals and chemtrailing, you're already being killed. The only chance you've got is to stand up and to say no. We want you to know about the re-education camps, the red list, the blue list, the green list, so that we can have a debate about it so they can't pull it off when they try to pull the switch. And now the military and the police are awake to a great extent. We won't be caught flat-footed. We're telling you how bad it is because we believe you'll then take action.
Absolutely. And the greatest survival tool is your brain. The greatest antidote for fear is knowledge that we document. Look, we spend so much... And action. And the action is where most people think that...
And look at InfoWars. Look at Gary. Look at you. We are about action.
Action. And we're in the studio today to basically say, this is a plea. This is a triune plea to basically get people to understand that you're out of time. Now, look, even like when your car runs out of gasoline, the carburetor still has enough gas to continue on for a short spurt. And what we're trying to do today is give everybody not a short spurt, but we're trying to refill your tank so you can be active and not sit back.
This is the time for maximum effort.
Absolutely. Gary?
Man, I'm on fire, guys. You know, a few years ago, it might have been difficult to get up and stand beside us and what we're doing right now. But it is so obvious. It's so in your face.
Open world government.
Yeah. You know, thanks to Snowden and WikiLeaks, we know they're listening to all of our phone calls. You read the disclaimer in your television set not to say anything because it might be monitored. And yet we sit here and somebody can deny that information is being gathered. It ain't going to be in our...
I remember Quail 20 years ago saying your TV's watching and listening to you, and then engineers came and showed me the Scientific Atlantic boxes. We're doing it.
Yeah, and the disclaimer is on a box of a number of your television sets. There it is. And Trump has done a really great thing. You know, I don't agree with everything he says, but this guy is made it okay to talk about political correctness. He's made it okay to talk about globalism. And I think today we should talk about that a little bit. it is no longer a conspiracy theory to use the word globalist. It is part of our common vernacular.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Yeah. Yep. It's a nationalist versus globalist world we're in right now, whether it's Brexit, and they chose wisely, or whether it's Marine Le Pen in France or Podemos in Spain, or here in the United States. Trump is the nationalist. He's standing for American sovereignty, American freedom.
And this is nationalism's last stand.
Yep. Absolutely. Hillary claims she is a globalist. And here's the problem with globalism. They're going to package it as if it's some solution to war, which, by the way, they're creating World War III so that they can solve the problem by having a global government. And guys, that's just the Hegelian dialectic. That's the strategy where you create a problem, and then when you provide the solution, you acquire power. That is straight out of the book. In fact, all of the chaos going on right now, the open borders, the importing of unvetted Syrian refugees, who the FBI says up to 10% are radicalized.
It's a classic destabilization program. The Southern Command has come out and warned of Sunni extremists crossing the southern border. That's in the news today on drudgereport.com.
Yeah, and, you know, ISIS has been coming across the border. FBI says they're now in all 50 states. You know, they want us to believe that they're incompetent, but they're not. This is a strategy. It's by design, because, as Henry Kissinger said, the only way that you can have a one-world government is if you diminish the United States.
That's right.
They are deliberately diminishing us. Everything from spending our money to where it's never going to be recoverable, the debt's going to be so great, to opening the borders, to the lawlessness that the Hillary just got away with, literally murder. And Comey says, hey, just because we let her off, don't think we're going to let you off. They blatantly put that in our faces. And you know what? I'm not a subject. I'm a citizen. And I'm an American. And I believe in freedom, but I also believe that that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
That's right. And a historical moment is here. I want to ask both of you this. Steve Quayle, SteveQuayle.com. I mean, folks, I've known this guy 21 years, never met him in person. It's amazing. Here he is. If you're a radio listener, you can go to Infowars.com/show. Some cable systems and TV stations are also picking up large portions of the broadcast now and the nightly news. But here's Steve Quayle in the flesh, because we are at such a historic crossroads right now. Steve, going back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when you were writing your books on geoengineering, genetic Armageddon, you name it, now we're here. Now they admit chimeras, cross species. They admit world government. It's basically exactly what the Patriots and the John Birch Society and others told us they were going to do. Because people see this paradox. They go, wait, the government's run by corrupt, evil people, but you're saying the government's one of our greatest hopes. It's people in the military and in some of these agencies that actually know we're telling the truth, that have leaked the info. How did the John Birch Society know this stuff in the 50s and 60s? They had a lot of patriots telling them. That's why it's dead on. And so that's why we can't just have a war with the government in general. We have to have a war with the ideas of the globalists and point out they're occupiers in our government, or they will fool us into a civil war. Clearly, they're setting up civil war in Europe and here as you got into the destabilization program. How do we counter that?
Well, we counter it, first of all, by saying, look at the dialectic, which Gary brought up. You know, Hegel said, you create the problem. Everybody knows that. But what's tragic is most people don't understand that the war of the police against the people against the police. Alex, I was told a decade ago that we're talking about simply assassins to provoke the war between the police. Look, we talked about militarization of police, what, 15 years ago?
Then they'll use the cops getting killed as the cover to wipe a bunch of other ones out.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, it's always control the narrative. Whenever the mass...
and you talk about a list. We know the special list are on the police.
Yes. And for the record, police, feedback to you, military guys, they've got their wives, where their wives go shopping. They know everything. They're trying to ultimately force the police to be the first line of attack or arrest. And then once they're done with those guys, the blue list is simply this: police and military that go along with the original roundup and assassination. Everybody focuses on...
Break this down. This has been done in other communist countries under Nazi control. It's an old totalitarian program. Explain how the police are like the garbage men that bring in the garbage. But once they've done that, they're then taken out.
They're then taken out. It's just a fact. The war that's generated is being absolutely orchestrated, and the people that are behind the scenes, we call the hidden hand, the globalists, the illuminists, the elitists, and truly, Alex, the Satanists, they are implementing all of their predetermined, and I say this, hellish plans. When you and I started on the radio, we were trying to tell people about the events that were in the natural realm. Now, reading the front of Matt Drudge's page, it's like a world of supernatural evil. I heard you use those words the other day.
And speaking of Drudge, he's linked to our story from Fox News, Top Doctor, Concerns Over Hillary's Health, Not a Conspiracy Theory. We have top university professors, the heads of whole departments saying clearly she's got neurological problems. And the New York Times says, you know what, just delist those articles. Don't let people see them. I mean, they're nakedly pushing censorship now.
Yeah, they told Google to do that.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's just part of their exercise of control. And guys, we got to realize this. You do not have a free press in this country, with the exception of this internet, which is another problem because the UN very likely going to take this thing over on October 1st. Yeah.
So notice it's all converging.
Well, we have a limited time. And man, I tell you what, if you can't wake up today with all the evidence in your face, I don't know what's going to wake you up. But when they, and Steve and I have been talking about this internet takeover, are they just going to shut it down, or are they going to slowly diminish it?
I think it's going to be slow.
And I agree with you on that. And how will it happen? Well, they're going to take something like Islamophobism, okay? When I say something like, you know, it probably not a good idea.
Sharia law is not compatible in a free country.
Yeah. Well, that makes me an Islamophobic.
And by the way, the BBC now said that this weekend. Yep. They said shut down websites and arrest people that even, and Germany's already doing it.
Yep, exactly.
Absolutely.
You can see the beta test.
You can, and what I think this is critical. Identify, vilify, nullify, destroy. They're in the process. It's a formula. I just started radio with. The identification, we're the bad guys. The vilification, we're the bad guys. We being the truth tellers. We being those that go out and say, wait, this is an orchestrated theater of the absurd.
We're the conspiracy theorists.
Yes.
Because we don't believe Hillary.
By the way, and what's interesting is, remember, those who initiate, this is just absolutely right out of Saul Alinsky on steroids. This is going by his book, and who obviously Lucifer is his direction. And
that's who he pledges to.
Yep. And so remember, telling the truth in times of deceit is a revolutionary act.
That's right.
Yep. And
how is it going for him, Steve Quayle?
Well,
Gary Haven?
I'll turn it right over to Gary. In my opinion, it's succeeding at breakneck speed. I want to get to the major crux of the matter on, you mentioned France, you mentioned Germany, obviously England. Alex, everybody's forgetting the first premise of the New World Order. Out with the old and in with the new. The Phoenix is their mascot. They must destroy their countries, their nationalism, their currencies, all their values.
They've said that.
They've said that. So what you're seeing in the world, everyone, is you're seeing the actual implementation of the destruction of borders, language, culture in order to introduce all of their designs and plans. And so we're saying we're holding back the dam to the best of our ability. But Alex, there's more leaks springing. And when this thing springs on the American citizens, you can watch everything that's going on in Venezuela to know what the future
Let's talk about that, because people say, oh, Alex, don't fearmonger. There's no depression. There are more than 30, 40 countries that are totally collapsed right now. It's unraveling all over the place. And we're just saying we need to fix this situation while the globalists are making it worse. We're going to come back and talk about all this and more with Steve Quayle and Gary Haven. I'm Alex Jones. Stay with us. I talk a lot about this because the lawsuit that happened a few years ago that got tens of thousands of pages from the Clinton Foundation, not their international foundation, but the foundation based in Little Rock at their library, tells you how they operate. And they say, anybody that criticizes us, we call them conspiracy theories. We threaten the mainstream media to never listen to anybody, liberal or conservative, that has a view outside of what we're saying. And we've got to ridicule anybody that starts independent media that ever tries to sell any of their own products, because we control them through the corporate sponsors. If anyone ever starts direct selling, which I figured out before I ever saw it in their memos, that will free them. And then it will create a new independent media and bring back journalism. They use that term, bring back journalism. They knew they'd already killed it by the early 1990s. And so that's why it's symbiotic. We sell books, videos, preparedness items, water filtration systems, non-GMO seeds, at very competitive or sometimes the lowest prices, nutraceuticals. These are things that counter the globalist onslaught. I mean, the media's written big articles. Look, Jones says the government's putting stuff in your water and then sells you a filter to get it out. Absolutely. It's what I do in my house. Yes, exactly. We fund ourselves morally and are independent. Again, they act like it's dirty because we didn't get billions of dollars like NBC and MSNBC and stimulus money. Yes, we're evil. We don't audit you with the IRS and take your money and then use it against you. We just sell products. You can competitively, go out and shop and decide to support this message that you see growing. And that's why I wanted to tell you, I finally had a chance to see the film last week. It is incredible. True Legends, the documentary film series. It's Discovery Channel and beyond quality. The Unholy See, the Vatican knows all the secrets. Look at how the Vatican is pushing all of this. We have this film now available at InfoWarsStore.com. We also have Eugenics, changing men into monsters, and what the globalists are trying to do, this huge coffee table book by Steve Quayle. We have the Hillary for Prison shirts. And, of course, we have the new $5 million budget fiction film that's a near-future dystopia, special director's edition available here exclusively this week. Next week's going to be in stores nationwide. They've stolen our country. It's time to take it back. Amerigeddon. And this is the director's lengthy cut of the expanded one, not the one that you're going to be seeing when it's later on TV later this year. It's also still in some theaters around the United States. When you purchase it, it supports Gary Haven and what he did. It supports InfoWars and our entire operation as well. And then finally, one of the nutraceutical supplements that is about to sell out probably today, 20% off on the Parasite Cleanse, Living Defense at InfoWarsLife.com. And please, get these films. Show these to people in your area. This is how we're winning the information war. Will InfoWars by itself, or Gary Haven making his film, or Steve Quayle by himself fix everything? No, but all of us together. And more media outlets are impossible to shut down. And now, globally, we see the anti-New World Order movement winning with the Brexit, having other big victories. We're gaining steam. The globalists are in trouble. But they're accelerating their plan to finish it up because they know their time is short, to quote the Bible. So, again, thank you for your prayers, your support. Don't thank us, because you are the reason we've been able to do this. We're here carrying the ball. And quite frankly, we're all in now. Like Jim Garrison said, they said, why are you still alive exposing the Kennedy assassination? They've killed over 300 people. And he said, because I'm the most vocal. I've already said everything. If they kill me, it highlights everything I've done. And I get that question. Why are you still alive, Steve Quayle?
Hey, man, I've been told that I'm the canary in the mine. You're the canary in the mine. And why aren't you dead? Well, I have a real simple answer to that. Because it's not time, and God's got people praying. Alex, one of the joys of my life has been to see the supernatural hand of God protecting us. We'll never know until we get to heaven how many times God intervened in our lives. And by the way, I just came up with a new name for Amerigeddon. It's going to be called Haven's Headlines, because I asked Gary and really asked him to pray about it, to release it exclusively through
Haven's Revelation?
Yeah, or Haven's Headlines, okay? Because I said, Gary, I don't know what you didn't cover, but the headlines of the day, all the UN stuff we've been warning about, all the UN images that have been seen across the land, across the internet, we're now seeing, and that's why I love about the timeliness. This is not a natural thing. The releasing of Amerigeddon and the headlines of the day concerning the UN, and we won't give it away, but the bottom line is it's the story plot. It's the theme.
And I would just add, Gary invested $5 million in this, and I'm probably guessing at this point haven't gotten it back. But you didn't do this to make money. It'd be okay if you did. You did it to warn people. You did it to put out good, culture that isn't globalist garbage. You put it out as an antidote. You put yourself in the arena.
Yeah, I didn't make a movie to make money. I made a movie to make a difference. And I think this movie has been fantastic. It's fact-based.
Huge success.
Yep, yeah, we tried to include all the content that's in the news every day that are being established against the people. By the way, Steve, if you're the canary in the coal mine, I must be the Gary in the coal mine.
Oh, okay, touche.
All right, there is so much to get into. Before the break, you guys were talking about a destabilization program. Clearly, I saw this a few years ago. Wasn't hard to see, but to actually see them do it is still crazy. Bring in 5 million Muslims, 80% military-age men, know that they were the Sunni invasion force into Syria, advertise for them to come, have the founder of the EU take a demotion and be the head of the refugee program, flood them into the U.S. as well. Then they start attacking, they start killing. We're told we've got to give our speech up. We've got to take Muslim classes. This is now happening in Europe and the U.S. We've got to comply with them. We're bad. And then Europe starts collapsing. Then they reorganize it. They're now saying, we want to get rid of sports team names that are, you know, the Spanish or the French or the English, because that makes all the immigrants upset. The American flag makes people upset. Don't wear it at school. We have to take our culture down for theirs. But that's just the cover for the globalism coming in. Now they're saying the European soccer teams are going to be mythical names. They're not even going to be country names because that's bad. You can see how they're doing it.
You know, they got rid of the Washington Redskins, or at least you're trying to. What are they going to do with the Oregon State Lady Beavers team?
Well, they're going to destroy all national borders, language, culture. They're going to destroy.
I guess they can spin that as something bad.
Yes. Yes, they're going to do everything they can, Alex, to absolutely destroy any integrity. Look, we knew when the President of the United States wouldn't even put his hand over his heart at the swearing-in ceremony. We knew when he was...
That was a message.
That was a message.
When they put Mateen, the shooter's dad, you know, behind Hillary, it's a message.
It's a message. It was a $375,000 well-paid message, but nevertheless, it was totally psyops. And here's the thing that I want to get across to everyone. They have to understand that what we're doing right now is giving you the last breath of reality-based news. And I'm not so sure that it's all going to be based in the political realm.
And that's what Drudge came here and said last year. He said next year's it.
Yep, I agree with him. And that's why I think the timing of this, look, I don't know if I'll ever be with you again, but I thank God for this opportunity. You can't take anything.
Well, it shows how late it is that you are here.
Yeah, it shows how late it is. It's that demanding. And it's not...
Drudge hadn't done an interview in years. He popped up here to warn.
Right.
People better understand that's how serious this is. And I hope we make it, something huge doesn't happen, and I hope we're still here next year. I'm just saying I'm really concerned. I'd say 50-50 right now.
And I'm a little bit more than that. I'm saying 70-30 against us, because here's the thing. All of the news that's out there, remember, the #1 goal of the global elitists, the Satanists, the Luciferians, is to overwhelm us with data, overwhelm us with problems, terrorize us. But you know what? There's a great scriptural reference. The righteous are as bold as lions. And so the thing is we don't have to sit and cower in fear. And that's what they're counting on, Alex. They're counting on people just fearing and caving in.
Listen, let's talk about real fear. If the globalists ever get their agenda, again, people think that I'm fear-mongering, bringing up real crises. I'm bringing it up to stop it. If I call my neighbor, hey, your house is on fire, it's not to fear-monger. It's so we can get the fire department out there, and I'm telling them. Okay, that's taking action. If I say, hey, your wife's choking, I'm going to do the Hamlet maneuver, it's not fear-mongering, I'm going to save her. I've actually seen people try to stop me saving a woman. That's how they were saying 911, 911. So we're sitting here seeing this unfold. So let's actually tell people, what is the New World Order's real goal? If they win, that's what people should be worried about.
Well, look at every place you go, your own family, 9 out of 10 people are to be destroyed. And that's you've quoted, we can quote ad nauseum everybody who said it, from Jacques Cousteau to Prince Philip. It doesn't matter who you quote.
Ted Turner.
Ted Turner. And by the way, Ted Turner said if there is a heaven, and I'm going to assure him there is, that he's going to go up to God and punch him in the nose. And I told Gary Haven, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to seeing that when God says, take your best shot, Ted. You know, I mean, that is the epitome of vanity. But here's the thing. Where you're coming to, where I'm coming to, where Gary's come to, is the fact that this is a supernatural evil. And again, Matt Drudge is to be commended because he's telling people, look, we never had to deal when we started. We never had to deal when we started on broadcast radio with people eating people's faces off, or people chopping up human beings, or Christians absolutely being slaughtered worldwide, and the Muslims in charge don't ever want to talk about that. You see, because that's where the disconnect is. The disconnect is simply that...
And mental illness is exploding.
Mental illness.
Craziness, you see it everywhere.
Demon possession. Demon possession. Jesus cast out demons. You know what happens in the United States nowadays? They welcome them. They give them a political title, and they say, go destroy the country. And
or they build statues to them in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah, amen.
Extraordinary. Or New York City, which almost happened.
Yeah, so we're dealing with the basis of all this. Hillary Clinton, Saul Alinsky, Obama, Saul Alinsky, and he dedicates his book to Lucifer, okay? And we talk about Luciferians. You were the guy that went out to the Bohemian Grove, made your videos on it, and people still didn't believe it. Now you've got everybody putting their hand over their eye. I'm saying it to describe it. You've got.
Oh, I know. They'll say I'm doing it too.
Yeah. And by the way, you can look at. I don't have slits in my pupils. You know, it's the idea is simply this: Donald Trump, in my opinion, is God's prosecuting attorney. He's laying out the evidence, and it's like everything evil is swarming upon him. I think that the fascinating thing about this is that, you know, you probably heard this, but I gave a word that I really felt was an answer to prayer. And God said, before I allow America to be destroyed by the Russians and Chinese, okay, now this is hard to take, I'm going to reveal the sins of America's leaders to the people, and the people sins before a holy God.
Doesn't that biblically always happen? Before a country goes under judgment, they get warning after warning, and then one really big warning.
I believe the big warning's coming. I believe the ultimate warning is coming. I don't know if it's going to be geophysical. You know, for instance, Tambora, a volcano. People say, what a hypocrite. You live in Montana. You right on the Yellowstone supervolcano. I can tell everybody this. I told the BBC, get down to the South Pacific before the band of...
Well, I was about to say, you were the guy saying 20 years ago, get ready for the Ring of Fire to wake up. It has. The most action ever recorded in modern history.
And we're seeing now climate change. And let me tell you where climate change comes from. In the book Xenogenesis, I have an interview. This is the most critical thing. I told this on Jim Baker's show. By the way, we asked everybody to raise their hand, or those who listen to InfoWars to raise their hand. 99% in the audience at Jim Baker's show raised their hand.
Wow, that's a big show.
That's a big show. So the thing is that in Xenogenesis, I made the statement, I'll make the statement for your audience. The most important information I've ever gotten in 10 years is contained in the book Under the Rainbow. Basically, a dying CIA high-ranking official talked about the chemtrail. And as you know, I broke that story 20-some years ago. But it's more than what people think. It's not just to destroy the food, destroy the atmosphere, destroy us. It's to destroy the balance that God created. The rainbow was God's covenant with man that he wouldn't destroy the earth by a flood again. So in xenogenesis means that an addition of the third strand of DNA, which is either alien, fallen angel. When I say alien, I'm talking about genetically altered DNA put into the human genome to do away with...
I was about to say, even if people... I never get into space aliens and things because you can't prove it one way or the other. What I get into is they're creating new species and new DNA and artificial DNA that is alien, not of this world.
That's what I'm
saying.
saying.
And now they're mixing it with nanotech, so they're now making it silicon-based.
And when you get silicon-based life forms versus, you know, carboniferous life forms...
That's what you've got on the cover of the book.
Yep. And can I hold this up?
Sure.
Yeah. It's really important. It's got 3 elements in the cover of Xenogenesis. This is done by Duncan Long.
And that's available now at InfoWarsStore.com.
InfoWars.com. But you've got the flying saucer, you've got the baby, and you've got the robotic. We're dealing with transhumanism. We're dealing with stuff that's literally out of myths.
And in their own words at Bohemian Grove and Skull and Bones, they believe they're channeling from creatures in another dimension, building things that they've been given divine guidance to do. So whether you're a Christian or Satanist, whatever, the atheists are way behind because the elite, like Darwin, channeled this whole vision of DNA and world government and gave it to Galton, who created the eugenics movement, all off of hallucinations that Charles Darwin says he got from entities.
Right.
And by the way, that's not in the Origin of Species, but he wrote letters that are public saying this. This is a fact.
Oh, absolutely. And the transhumanism, you know, George Orwell, they who control the past determine the future. And my statement to just be one up on Orwell, they who control the past control the future. So the entire exchange, the language of the day is this: God's creation is not good enough. We're going to create an Ubermensch, a Superman, okay? The book that I wrote, which will be available on Infowars.com, Empire Beneath the Ice. Do you know that even when Dr. Werner von Braun was interviewed and another very famous German scientist, they basically said it's not that we Germans were smarter than everybody else, but all the information came to us from spiritual sources. In the book, I actually...
And by the way, I'm an expert. I've read hundreds of books on the Nazis. I really researched that when I was in high school and college. And then that's in the Nuremberg trials.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were chopping Germans' heads off and then trying to, like, seance info from them. And we're getting all this technology.
Well, they had technological demons and that they literally... And by the way, this is all provable.
But again, even if people don't believe this, look at Ray Kurzweil. He says, I don't believe in God. I'm going to build one.
Yes.
But we've all got to die first.
Yep.
I mean, it's all directly out of the Bible.
They get to live forever, but we all got to die first. There's something wrong with that.
We're going to kill everybody, but then I'm going to let you live forever. But kill them first, then I'll give you the power.
Right. And so what are we seeing? We're seeing...
You're going to be a god. That's Genesis.
That is the book of Genesis.
Well, in fact, it's the original lie. You know, Satan went to Eve and said, you can be like God. And by the way, you will not die. And if you think about that, in this current...
And that's the headlines. Why are all the billionaires obsessed with living forever? That's the headline of the Associated Press, because they're into this.
Yeah, and man, there's some ugly dudes. Have you seen a picture of Rockefeller lately, or Kissinger?
People ask why they can still be alive, because basically they are human blood-sucking parasites, okay? The Rockefeller Foundation and other foundations they've exploited, if you will, trying to enhance the human genome. But the missing element in this, and this is why, people...
That's what they founded Cold Springs Harbor, the Rockefellers, and the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, and they're over most of the blood products in the U.S. Peter Thiel's come out and says he wants the young and the blood to live forever. I'm not saying he might even be a bad guy, but he's like kind of saying what they're saying in public.
Right, and here's the thing. I talked to a pilot, you'll appreciate this, Gary, that flew into one of the secret laboratories in Virginia someplace, and he said this: as far as you could see, like a football field inside, underground, our laboratories, the #1 obsession was enhancing humans, okay? Enhancing what were humans, that's what he said. And the chimeras, the production. Look,
listen, they tried to hire my dad in the mid-'80s, $500,000 a year, because he was teaching dental implants at Baylor Medical School.
Wow.
And he was already doing work on like high-level CIA people and stuff, just their teeth. Because, he had a clearance or whatever for working at Baylor. And and my mom wanted to know, and he said, well, it's classified, I can't tell you. This is at the dinner table when I'm like 9 years old. And he goes, it's cyborgs. That's all they're going to tell me. And then my mom said, well, David, is this? He goes, no, they're hiring a bunch of the top oral surgeons. It was a huge industrial program. It wasn't just him. They hired some of his colleagues. We're going to talk about the Methuselah gene. We're going to talk about a lot of really heavy things here. And here's my point. Whether you believe in this, whether I believe in this, the elites believe in it. And they have discovered cancerous cells that never die. They're called immortal cell lines. The first one was found here in the United States back in the 40s. And the cells are still alive today. And the military is training to, quote, take out mass zombie attacks. I'm talking Associated Press. I'm talking Business Insider. This news is 4 or 5 years old. Pentagon document lays out battle plan against zombies, 2014. Now, I was talking about it 2 years before it was even in the news, because that's, again, how they say, we're not practicing to mow down citizens. It's just zombies for fun. But what they mean is masses of citizens during collapse of society, people act like zombies. But you take it even further than that, Steve Quayle, and then Gary Haven.
Well, zombies has a twofold meaning. The zombies are those who are left on the surface of the earth after all these calamities happen, and that's kind of the coverall theme for anybody that's not one of the elite. But that's on the left hand. On the right hand are the zombie viruses. And Alex, I've literally interviewed a high-ranking military guy that went into great detail about the test zone in Iraq for the actual release of some form of a zombie virus, and talked about a guy walking, multiple witnesses, with half his head gone, a hole in his chest, dragging his arm backwards and breathing out of lungs that are gross. Now, I'm sorry to be gross, but that's exactly what he
Viruses that turn off the normal synapses of the body and let it go even further.
Right.
And isn't that associated with rabies viruses?
Right. And remember, we're in the age of rabies viruses, but we're in the age of the most, it's a cornucopia of evil brewing in a...
And they're just testing everything.
And everything. And by the way, the Human Genome Project was specifically designed and funded to find, if you will, the demon blood strains of...
I was about to say, and in the new Superman movie, again, they admit, all these big famous comic book writers, that it's propaganda placement or predictive programming to get people ready for things. You've got the doomsday character that cannot be killed.
Right.
Because he's this mutagenic abomination.
Mutagenic abomination. There used to be a time when comic book carriers were, comic book characters were the good guys, Superman, truth, justice, and the American way, and the American way. Now you got Superman fighting Batman, and so many superheroes. But what are they saying? The future belongs to genetically altered people or entities or robots versus to us. And now
they're saying robots are going to have rights. You aren't. They're totally, admittedly preparing us. Gary Haven.
Yeah, they call this predictive programming. All the kids now are worshiping these comic heroes that have had genetic alterations. And of course, Steve writes about that. I want to mention something about virus. When millions of us received the polio virus as children, we were contaminated with cancer cells.
It's admitted.
Yeah, and that is a fact that's easy to find. And so trusting the medical community to care about you without questioning them. Believe me, they have not proven their trustworthiness to me.
And Gary, keep going. I just want to add, it's in the mainstream news today. Kids in the West and young people are the most depressed they've ever been. Women are the most depressed. But they say, I don't care. I want my video games. I want my iPhone. I want my TV. And they actually get defensive if you warn them that they've been programmed by it. Because to them, it's the real world.
Actually, that's so true. Alex, all the video games, all of virtual reality was designed to take thinking out of the realm of the next generation or the next 2 generations, because that's their world. They don't understand history. You've done the man.
It's the proto-matrix.
It is. And it gets worse than that, because they're divorcing them, and they will then believe a superhero coming on their iPhone or on their iPad or whatever going, hi, I'm the superhero.
That's their new friend that they...
Yes.
Real people won't be influencing them. It'll be their... Well, they admit dating sites. Most of it's a fake bot.
Right, and it'll be basically a sympathetic demon saying, oh, I understand your problems.
They admit it's going to be an AI conscious algorithm that's a real thing, and then you bring into your house the little Amazon computer that you talk to that runs everything.
Absolutely. And remember this, any computer that runs anything is watching everything you're running, doing, thinking, feeling. And why is it the Defense Department was so concerned with all of their their brain enhancement, their brain reading, the whole, if you will,
interface.
Yeah, the interface. Thank you.
The brain has no firewall.
Right. And the idea is that to control everything that their soldiers think. Look, they are doing away with veterans for one reason primarily, and that is because those men and women would give their life because they love this country.
They're not perfect, but they're the last free independent warriors.
Absolutely.
They're the final phase out of humanity. They're phasing out families, women, men, everything. Plants won't produce seeds that produce seeds anymore. It's the death of this planet's system that God created. We're seeing the extermination, the execution of the planet by the very people that claim they're the guardians. Gary Haven.
Yeah, you know, we got to realize scripturally, Satan hates people because we are made in his image. And it's all about destruction. He wants to destroy everything. And these globalists...
And even if Satan didn't exist, which we know he does, this is Satan. This is what the Bible said. This is it.
Yep. And joining the spiritual realm to the liberty movement is critical right now. And I'm so glad
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about fighting back.
Okay. You know,
that's what you're doing. You're taking this message directly to the...
Yeah, you know, I could be on a desert island somewhere enjoying myself. I've made all the money I need. So why am I bothering with this? Well, I'm bothering with it as if my life depended on it, my grandchildren, your family's lives depend on it. We have an enemy. You know, I love the line out of the movie that HLL Mel can always have trouble with that movie. You'll recognize it. The hero tells the king, the enemy is upon us. And the king says, I'm not prepared for open warfare. And he says, well, be prepared or not, the enemy's here.
That's right.
And, you know, so we have to realize, I don't care how afraid you are,
That's
how
it.
busy
People
you are.
think if they just deny this, then it goes away. No, the only way to be safe is to fight it.
Absolutely. Churchill said, I love what Churchill said. He says, an appeaser is someone who feeds the alligator hoping he's not going to eat him. And that's the world we live in right now. Guys, the alligator's coming for you.
Well, hoping the alligator eats you last.
Yeah.
You're just stalling.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, we've been thrown to the alligators. We're thrown on, their goal is to throw us on the trash heap of history. Here's the thing, everyone. Throw out the word conspiracy. You can watch it in real time on network news. Everybody has teamed up against...
They're unified. They're lying. They've got fake polls. They're delisting him on Google. They're lying about us. They're saying, shut down Breitbart, shut down Drudge, shut down Jones. They're openly saying, shut us up. They've said on MSNBC and Salon, I should be arrested.
Well, look, here's the deal. In a kingdom of liars, telling the truth is the ultimate enemy. And what people have got to... here's what. They don't even have to wrap their heads around it now. They can see. I don't need to tell somebody who used to be middle class and now they can't even feed their families that the country's changed. Liars, liars, liars. And there's a wonderful passage in the New Testament that men will give heed to seducing spirits. They will give heed. That means they will be taken in by lying demons. And
then they believe the con more than reality.
Yeah, and by the way, lawlessness, that's called the mystery of iniquity in the New Testament. We are a lawless society. When the director of the FBI absolutely goes into a great, basically, soliloquy on, yes, she's guilty, but basically, I can't do anything about it. That's the
That's a declaration that evil has taken over.
That's evil reigns. Evil reigns. And the only thing to hold back evil, obviously, is when good men do nothing. But more than that, the definition of conspiracy, Alex, no one can accuse anybody of that word because they'd have to admit that those who they listen to, mainstream news, that those people are doing is this: they're vilifying to destroy, and that's what's at stake.
I was about to say, and Gary and Steve, Gary Haven, speak to this though, because you started getting into it earlier. You're going out, reaching out to evangelicals. You're going out, getting on these programs that reach hundreds of millions of people potentially, and that's great because that's an audience that has been absolutely on target with so many issues, but also in the dark about the fact that it's actually happening right now.
Yeah, Steve and I were on the Jim Baker program this last week. He's got a huge audience, and what a great opportunity to really speak truth to people. The evangelical community is a natural community to turn this country around. We're committed to truth. We serve the author of truth, Jesus Christ. And yet the evangelicals have been held back. And I hate to say it, but it's a lot of these nonsense going on into their churches. They hear about name it and claim it, and the myth about the pre-trib rapture that we're all going to check out of here before this happens. Guys, you need to get in your Bible and learn the truth. But I've been given the privilege to speak to that audience because I'm one of them. I'm a Christian, and I understand the truth. And I'm also part of the liberty movement, and I'm part of the truth movement. And to join these two together, we can take our country back. Now, there's going to be a battle, and there is going to be a new world order. The question is, will we be a remnant that escapes from the real destruction?
And by the way, this is the most dangerous thing you've ever done. Chuck Norris said, to you and his son about the film, we'll get ready for him to come after you, putting this film out, trying to go in and get the Christian churches moving in the right direction, like the Black Brigades in 1776, is the key to this. Yeah. And, that's, you can tell why they went after Baker and attacked him, because he's the type of guy that actually will talk about this now. And despite them trying to destroy him, he's back on his feet again and reaching tens of millions. It's a testimony of how they demonize, how they lie, and what they do. But the good news is it's got to really worry the globalists. I go back to this. The military is so awake. The police are so awake. This is going to be spectacular. I mean, this collision of forces is going to be amazing.
Well, it's going to be, Jesus said it like this: there's never been a time in history like it, nor would be again. And except the days were shortened for the elect's sake, there'd be no flesh left alive. Well, Alex, when we're talking about zombies, we're talking about transhumanism. We're talking about the destruction of 90%. You and I broke the story on Deagle, and the Deagle, remember the survey? We did that on your show, and Deagle put up, look, we're not a conspiracy. We're not some kind of satanic cult. We're just telling the information that we have available based on the death of the middle class, how few of Americans are going to be. And you remember what the percentage was? It was really low. In other words, we went from 330 million people, Gary,
to 60 million. And by the way, they just released some new numbers. And
let's talk about these studies they've done.
Yep.
When we come back. Wow, Gary Haben and, of course, Steve Quell are our guest. Both of their new films are available at InfoWarsStore.com, Amerigeddon and The Unholy Sea. I want to talk some about The Unholy Sea, also get into some of the latest news, developments, Donald Trump, what we should be doing to support Donald Trump. Steve Quayle, 25 years on radio, written dozens of books, a staple of Coast to Coast AM, and, of course, our show. He's here in studio. Gary Haven has been personally flying him around. Gary pilots his own jet, or jets, to speak to groups and go on television programs to warn people because there's so much crazy stuff happening. Now, we're going to obviously have in the fourth hour a lot of the topical news and things that are happening in the world today covered. David Knight is back from a well-deserved vacation, so David Knight will be here in studio. But shifting gears into just news in general. Teenagers struck by depression, the Times of London, an epidemic. And again, this modern world is not empowering people. This is being done by design. How do we reach out to young people? I mean, obviously, young people are one of our greatest assets. They're one of the most awake groups, but it's a paradox. They're also one of the most unawake groups. It's almost like there's a division. How do you reach somebody in the matrix?
Let me start with this one. David Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, who amassed a fortune. In today's dollars, it was over $600 billion. So he was by far the wealthiest man in the world, probably up at the level of Solomon. Well, he took his money and funded a variety of things. And one of them was the education system. And a quote from Rockefeller was that we don't want people that are thinking, we want people that are workers. And so they funded an education system that for all of these years has really taken away the ability to think clearly, to think critically from our education system.
Created robots.
Yeah. And so they've really they've got 100 years investing in taking away the ability for people to think as individuals. And so I think the first thing we tell our young people is, hey, step back and think. We teach them how to think critically so that they can look at the evidence that's all over them. You know, Alex, one of the things I'm excited about is there's so much evidence. My gosh, it's almost every day there's something in the news that there's no way to explain it except for what they want to call conspiracy. It's no longer conspiracy, it's fact. And so
sure, why would NBC News and ABC all in the last few months come out? I was saying, why is it suddenly all over the news on CBS, NBC, ABC, 666, 666, you want to take a chip, you're going to get a chip. And I went, wait, the date 666 is coming up. Everything with these people is messages. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, the chip and the idea that you'd have to take this mark to buy or sell, you know, that was written 2,000 years ago. And guess what, guys? Here we have the technology. We have the computer system that can control zillions of contractions.
Exactly.
It is upon us.
Steve Quayle, what is the chip? What is the face scan? What is the mark of the beast?
Well, the mark of the beast, obviously, people will argue over it, but the mark of the beast, the word literally means to inscribe in the skin on the hand or in the forehead. Obviously, there's genetic tattoos. There's all sorts of subdural implants. But here's what
the government's got to give you something or you don't buy and sell.
Right. You don't buy, sell, or trade. And that's where we're going to be faced. The ultimate decision for Christians, are they going to yield and capitulate and lose their salvation? Because, listen, when the day comes, by the way, the nice thing about the mark of the beast is biblically, God won't leave us without a witness. There'll be two witnesses in the book of Revelation that are saying, this guy's the bad guy, and I'm talking supernatural. They'll have the power.
But don't those witnesses finally get killed?
Yeah, after 3.5 years, and they lie. Their bodies lie in the streets of Jerusalem, and everybody gives gifts, okay? They're just happy they got rid of these two voice pieces for the God they've hated so long.
These two voices of truth.
But they're protected for several years.
Yeah, they're protected up until the day they die, and they're able to smite the earth with all the plagues, counter plagues. It's kind of like the Egyptian Pharaoh was able to do his dirty deeds, but then God sent his servant Moses to deliver.
And that's Newtonian physics.
Yeah, absolutely. But see, here's the thing, too. I'm looking at your headlines. Teenagers struck by depression epidemic. I would like to know two things. How many of those kids are on SSRIs, okay? How many of them are gamers? Look, I have nothing against playing video games, but if they're programming you to basically, at a certain subliminal thought, go out and go on a killing rampage, I'm against a PaCmAn. PaCmAn, ladies and gentlemen, pocket monsters, and the craze, that is the biggest neurolinguistic program.
Well, they admit that you're recording everything for Google in live time.
Absolutely.
And it tells you where to go to get the monster, not knowing you're documenting everything for it.
They want everybody's immediate surroundings. They want everybody's immediate friends. And like I said, it all goes into an algorithm. It goes into a matrix.
Let's talk more about the technocracy when we come back with Steve Quayle and Gary Haven, stevequayle.com. Steve Quayle is our guest exclusively here in studio. You never see this guy on TV, but he's now making films. He's now going on international TV and radio broadcast, and he's here with us after 21 years interviewing him, and Gary Haven has brought him here. Very thankful for that. I've asked Gary to come in here basically whenever he wants to, because he's a great co-host here with the broadcast. Now, I didn't take a lot of phone calls today. I didn't take any, just because we've got so much to cover, but throughout the week I will be taking phone calls. Donald Trump's coming to town tomorrow. We're going to have crew out there covering that live as well. But I want people to understand something. Our reality is not what mainstream media is putting out. Obviously, that's a statement that stands on its own. And I don't know all the answers on the things we've covered here today. But they are pushing the mark of the beast. They are pushing you will take vaccines, you will take a chip. Just 10 years ago, they would say it didn't exist, or we have chips, but kooks don't like them. Now it's you will take one. And so there's this belligerence that's now being put out there that is waking a lot of people up. I see the globalists losing a lot of ground, but I guess they've got to go ahead and emerge and go to their final steps because that's their plan. and then it looks like they're going to go authoritarian and try to enforce it, again, just like the Bible states.
Absolutely. You know, it's fascinating that they're going by their script. I think God made the devil this ultimatum. You must warn them before you do it. And that's what we're seeing right now. Every signal, every policy, every action, they're telling you what they're going to do. And Alex, there's so many people that deny that they're really following their blueprint. Look, obviously, we're seeing the Middle East war. We're seeing the Christians, the war on Christianity. We're seeing the total destabilization of nation states, etc. But the supernatural element is still what's affecting our kids. Just to touch bases, teenagers struck by depression epidemic. The only thing that's going to set them free is truth. They're already too much into the matrix. The only thing that's going to set them free is values. And, you know, when someone said, well, Common Core, you know what I said? There was a guy, there was a cartoon show, Tom Terrific. The bad guy in that show was Krabby Appleton, rotten to the core. It's the same thing as all public education.
They'll go 10 miles out of their way to hurt somebody when doing the right thing is right there in front of them.
Absolutely. So it's destruction by design. I used to say dumb unto death, okay? That's dumb unto death. Now it's dumb unto destruction. They've got to wake up.
Well, my dad used to always sit there and explain to me, he'd say, son, there are people that would rather screw you out of a nickel than make $100 with you. They just want to screw you.
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking, really? Because, you know, I was a nice guy. My dad was nice. And got into life. It's like, wow, people really don't even really want prosperity. They just want to run everything, even if it's a pile of skulls.
The global elite, besides being Luciferians, besides being some of the most horrific entities on Earth. When I use the word entity, by the way, Alex, I mean something that's not human, okay? I want to make that clear. Or someone who has submitted their humanity to total demon possession.
Why do you think Obama always has little flies landing on him?
Well, can I tell you something? Michelle Obama, and you should have your guys look this up, was talking about his odor, okay? Now, I'll tell you why. Beelzebub in the New Testament means Lord of the Flies, okay? Lord of the Flies. So Beelzebub is another name for who? Satan.
And I mean, it's amazing, though. Almost everywhere he goes, there's just flies all over the place. Well, and the media makes a joke out of that. It's true.
Well, it's just like this. There's a picture, and I can't find it. Maybe you guys can research it. But Tony Blair had, in the old days of videotape cameras, he had a reverse polarity incident. And what was on that image, Alex, was something that was a classic representation of a demon. Pointed ears.
Oh, I remember Drudge carried it.
Yeah.
And it was like on TV, and it was like ears and a demon and horns.
Yeah, and the same thing happened to Hilarious, okay? Hillary. H-E-L-L-A-R.
Well, she doesn't need that to happen. She has that weird Joker demon face. I mean, if I saw somebody in a parking lot with that face, I would go away from them.
Right, but here's the thing. And the idea, what I'm just saying about the image captured on Tony Blair was also captured on Hillary, and that was on Matt Drudge too. But it was a Tony Blair one. If you can find it to show it. What's happening now?
That guys, Google Tony Blair demon, but let's go further. Yeah. It was in major British newspapers, because back then I wouldn't cover this stuff. That was right before I went into Bohemian Grove, because people, you know, basically hired me to do it. I didn't even believe it was going to happen. I mean, even back then, like 1999, 2000, I was still having you on, but going, oh, come on, Steve. And, and it was in the British papers that he would be possessed by the spirit of the light in the morning. His wife admitted this.
Right.
And that he would fall on the ground and flop around and get his orders. And it was in the newspapers. And then his wife was defending it.
Yeah, and they went to the Great Pyramid of Giza, remember, and spent the night there.
And Francois Mitterrand has the 666 pieces of glass for the pyramid at the Louvre.
Yep.
And dedicated it to Lucifer.
Absolutely.
That's in the newspaper.
Well, here's the deal. The war is now plain for all to see. And it's very clear, Alex, it's playing out.
No, that's not the one. It's him at a lectern, and it was weird. It was like he suddenly, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep. Well, and okay, the image you have on the screen right there a moment ago, the all-seeing eye, what's that? That's on your dollar bill on the top. But what is the critical issue about this? Lucifer was denied publicly, but worshipped individually or in secret, okay? Mm-hmm. And so now they're all open, okay? They're all open. Hollywood is overplaying their hand, and they're overplaying it because they think there will be no challenge. I've said this before. They will not write the last pages of history. God, who will act in history, is about to act. I said there's going to be something coming really quick, and I believe it's going to be, how should I say this, supernatural in origin that is going to rattle this country one more time. I don't know if it's a horrific earthquake. I don't know. But it's going to be something so out of their control that they're going to have to basically go on and say, well, what does this mean? And the talking heads will have no answers, And then you and I and Gary will be on saying, this is exactly what it means.
Well, all I know is there is a mocking of God, a mocking of decency, a feeling of invincibility with these people when history shows they are not invincible. So there is this hubris, there is this arrogance to them.
Well, arrogance is always basically based on someone who thinks they're in control. But I believe that what we're seeing right now is I believe we're seeing played out before the American citizenry, Hillary's programming melting down her body. They can only juice her so many times with whatever.
Oh, let me bring that up. Yeah. What is your intel, or you as well, Gary? I'm going to fix that earpiece because I've seen you do it.
Thank you.
And this is fun on air. We're teleprompter free. Well, it should be popping in here. I'll just cram it in there. There you go. I'm going to fix that on air. This is teleprompter free, folks. This is how we do it. If you're a radio listener, Infowars.com/show. Is that better? Or just cram it in there, or we'll get you a new, fresh earpiece.
Okay, this is good now. It's turned.
Fantastic. What is going on with her health? Because I know she, had these brain surgeries, and she was in the hospital off and on for over a year, and clearly something's going on, but she looks worse and worse every week. Is it the campaign trail? All these doctors say she looks like she has serious problems. They say it's a conspiracy theory. What do you think's going on?
Well, I think you had Steve PaCmAn on, who I know personally, you've known him for years in Bozeman.
Yeah, by the way, he says hi.
Tell him hi. Hey, Steve. The bottom line is a very bright man, probably one of the brightest men. You know it, I know it, we know it.
Super famous spot chief.
Yeah. And by the way, the second most famous man to be murdered after Andrew Breitbart, remember, was Tom Clancy. And Tom Clancy...
He co-wrote books with Clancy.
Yeah.
By the way, Clancy was starting to go public about the New World Order.
Yes, he was. And the thing that I think was the trigger point is when he was going to bring up the collusion between our government and the control of radical Islam, okay? Now, what's interesting to me about this is that you're seeing the fullest implementation, Alex, of the complete destruction from within. Everybody who's in, let's call him the Lord of the Flies, the Lord of the Flies administration is been on.
Ooh, that's a good name for it.
Yeah, let's use that, because you asked me the question, and let me share this too. When you're in the world of evil spirits and true biblical deliverance, the evil spirits that come out always have, seriously, a smell of sulfur, and it's fascinating, or a smell of feces. Let's just be blunt. So what I find is fascinating that in so many instances of Bohemian Grove, you're told what the people do. All this stuff, it's all centered around that which...
Oh, I was asking earlier, in Skull and Bones, they're worshiping angels. They believe we're giving...
Fallen angels.
Fallen angels. They believe angels, eulogia, goddesses, but they do it in big pools of feces.
Right. And, without trying to be too overly overt in my statement, the thing is that isn't it interesting? That represents death. Feces never represent life, okay? It represents live food that passes through your body that comes out, okay? So what we're seeing here is a total embrace of death. These people worship death. And all of us are to be the sacrifices. Our children, okay? Our grandchildren. I mean, they want to end the human line within the next several years at the latest.
And they're doing it through the vaccines that clearly have binary systems to change our DNA.
Right. One of the other things, since I was the guy that brought out chemtrails in the first, I've always been concerned about a binary follow-up. In other words, that would be the primary spraying, but at some point they introduce some form of a virus or some form of a nanoparticle that basically...
And by the way, they have a lot of kooks out there that misrepresent things so they can then distract everybody. But what we're saying is there's hundreds and actually thousands of patents on how to put it in the fuel. It goes out the jet engines. There are real crystals out there. There are real water vapor. There's real condensation trails. We're talking about persistent ones that form these pollution clouds that have darkened the earth more than 20%, according to NASA. It's a massive geoengineering program. And then Bill and Melinda Gates come out with sponsored textbooks for kids saying we're spraying sunscreen on the earth added to jet fuel. So they admit to kids they're doing it in major textbooks, but tell us it doesn't exist.
Well, again,
Steve and I were at 45,000 feet of my jet the other day, and I had the privilege of being taught the difference between contrails and chemtrails at 45,000 feet with the men who really made it public. It's real, and you can see the difference with in front of your eyes. And of course, people now can look up at the sky and see the difference. When you and I were growing up in the 60s, the sky didn't look like
totally clear. 70s, 80s, yeah, totally clear. I mean, they admit that it's dimming the earth. So what's global dimming about?
Well, global dimming, I think it's a darkness that's coming on the planet. And there's a story on Drudge today that even the monuments in Washington, D.C. are being covered in a black slime. Did you see that?
Yes.
Okay, what's happened to the light of the world? Jesus is the light of the world. The evangelical Christians, portions of them will still admit that Jesus is the Son of God, but in order to be friends with the world, they've denied the very Lord that saved them. And I make no bones about it. We are in the situation we're in and condition we're in because the Christians didn't speak up. And Alex, look, the independent voices of, I would say, investigative journalism have been calling them to task. I'm calling them to task. So we need to get them to the point. And that's what God is opening doors for you. God is opening doors for Gary Haven. God's opened doors for me.
Well, I know this. The globalists are malevolent. They admit they're out to get people. They admit the planetary government project that's 50 times bigger than the Manhattan Project was built to bring in a planetary government to reduce the human population by 80 to 90%. That's official UN Biological Diversity Assessment in 1996. The full unedited one. I went to the UT library, got copies. It's in my film, Road to Tyranny. Actual copies where they say, we're going to reintroduce human sacrifice. We're going to reintroduce games based on debasing humans. We're going to have forced population reduction. We're going to bring in a pagan world government. I mean, they say it all in the UN. That's what's so crazy. And then they have the Lucifer Trust that runs the prayer chapel at the UN building in New York.
Absolutely. And they also have robots that are designed to basically feast on human decomposing bodies that fuel them. Okay?
That's right. The Pentagon bought a bunch of those that just go around killing people and then eating them.
Yep. And that's not nonsense. You know, I wrote the whole book about it. And by the way, I'm telling people this, that if you want the true understanding of chemtrails, you've got, and this isn't a pitch for the book, this is a pitch for the CIA revelation in the book on page 241 through 248. And it's a remarkable thing. Not only do the chemtrails take us back to a different atmosphere, if you will, a very time of primordial evil, but it also alters all the frequencies and waves, and God keeps things in
I was about to say, they admit now what the old-timers said thousands of years ago, that the moon, obviously the sun's the main driver of climate, but then the moon, when it gets in front of the sun or in front of the earth with the sun behind it, will block a lot of the solar rays, but not just solar, the other space rays and the other particula, the mini meteorites that are coming in, I guess, by the billions every day, that forms the nuclei for rain and weather and all of it. That entire frequency system is being changed and manipulated.
Absolutely. And Gary, share about the moon rise, because that was very cool. I looked, I said, I know this is significant, but I don't have it yet. All years you've been flying, 40+ years. Share with Alex. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, on Thursday we were at 45,000 feet as the evening came on, and the moon literally came out of the ground underneath us in rows. I've been flying for 40 years. I've really never noticed or seen that phenomenon. And by the way, also that you could see the shadow of the Earth as the sun had set. And by the way, the shadow was a curvature, not a line.
Yeah, exactly. I love these crazies that say it's flat. But, you know, that shows how people mistrust the media so much that they go to the other extreme other than thinking everything's a lie.
Yeah. I tell you what, we are living in the most fascinating times.
Well, we're living in science fiction. You've got you're flying around your private jets yourself, and, you know, we're fighting the New World Order, and there's, you know, pharmacological crops that can grow thousands of they can grow live vaccines in crops. You know, you got spiders that are part goat. You got doors on cows now that they grow humanoids in. And I was reading about it in a technical magazine, and I talked to somebody who'd been up at MIT, but out at one of their farms. They said, yeah, it's true. You know, I was there as part of my, MIT degree at the end of it, and they took us in and showed us the cows with the doors on the sides.
You know, Steve shared with me some fascinating
they've cut doors in on the sides and just go into the uterus whenever they want. Sorry, go ahead.
Steve shared some fascinating, hanging out with this guy 24 hours a day is just mind-boggling. He has a friend who's actually walked in. He kind of went down that path a minute ago. But people were in, not people, chimeras were in cages. Share that, a moment of that.
I remember you talked about this over a decade ago, and I thought you were nuts. Even though it was in publications, they have these.
Absolutely. A gentleman who was stationed in Texas, a big-time intelligence operator. He openly admitted to being an assassin. He openly admittedly doing all this kind of evil stuff. But I dropped him off at the airport the last time I ever saw him alive, and he said, I want you to know this. There are secret government labs all over the country, under the ground, and he said there are human-animal hybrids, and he said the thing that even got his attention, and he said, I'm an evil man, but we're half-human animal hybrids, and the human part of him was saying, help me, I'm a human. Alex, he broke like a dam and wept. And then I saw someone.
Well, I talked to a well-known genetic engineer, and they just told me, they said, listen, I'm not going to even get into it. Go ahead.
But here's the issue. Every wonderful thing that God made. Remember when there were blue skies? I remember I used to, as an early photographer, I called them F-16 days. That's when you had the brightness, the beautiful white clouds, and you could just get a great photo. The thing is that everything that was bright now is being just distorted, turned down. Isn't it interesting? The symbols of this country are being covered in a black slime, okay? Everything is falling apart. We are going into
the CIA admittedly said they financed ugly art and ugly buildings.
Absolutely.
Things that'll rot and look bad to make us feel bad.
Right, and it's all a psyop. You know, I told... they
want to give vaccines that, quote, stop anxiety, but actually stops the higher order thoughts.
Right. Well, after meeting with someone who we met with over at Jim Baker's very highly placed source, you know, I said to one of your guys, I said, let's have a national kill your iPhone day. I promise you, listening to him, I'm going back to flip phones, okay?
By the way, that's what Drudge has always said. And even though I can use an iPhone to shoot video, everything, I'm just going to use a camera. I'm done. It's gone.
Yep.
In fact, because they're horrible. They're sitting there typing, sending people stuff. It's crazy.
Right.
Why do we do this?
And my iPhone was taken over the other day. My camera turned on. And
wait, I didn't even know. I was telling you that happened to us.
Yeah, it just happened to me 2 days ago. My computers turn on when I shut them down.
That's happening to Roger Stone.
Yep.
I mean, they've announced they're just using their cyber system now to do whatever they want. They're just getting us used to it, saying, hey, we're not going to let you see any news about Hillary being sick. For a couple of years, I put out a magazine basically at cost, and it was successful. But compared to shooting one video and it reaches 1 million people, it just wasn't feasible to spend all my time messing with it. But one of the first magazines we came out with was a design that I came up with that I think really says it all. And it's this all-seeing eye pyramid that is jacked into the dehumanized devil's creation of a copy of what God had made, built on a pile of human skulls. This is an emergency transmission. And then we break down the end of humanity, rise of the robots. And they just tell us everywhere. All these socialist governments say, the answer to you not having a job is robots, which they admit will make you even more obsolete. I mean, this is so obvious. Steve Quayle, and of course, Gary Haben, other comments you want to impart to the listeners and viewers.
Well, we're seeing a technologically decadent society. I coined a term when I went on talk radio, technecadence, okay? Technological decadence. We're seeing the fulfillment, whether people believe it or not, we're seeing the fulfillment of the words of Jesus, that they literally, the illuminists, the elite, the globalists, want the destruction of human flesh. And not only that, they're going to power the robots with human flesh. And you know what, Alex? You talked about the mark of the beast. I got to get something. You know what the very first name of the very first chip that was able to basically do all of the things that were going to be in the future? It was 20 years ago. It was called the Soul Catcher chip.
I remember.
Yep. And you and I think that was one of our first or second shows we did together 21 years ago. But what would possess, good word.
Yeah, we go to wide shots. People can see this.
Yep. What would possess them to name that the Soul Catcher? Again, it's a dehumanization. This is what's at stake, ladies and gentlemen. It's not your retirement. It's not, gee, where do you go on vacation next month? It's what do I do to be the most informed I can become and be as active as I can become.
And by the way, they're creating an economy where you almost have to be in their system. They plan to force everybody into it to even communicate and warn people. You've got to be part of the system, but not of it, I guess. I want to play this clip since you mentioned, and we're going to come back and talk to Gary Haben and then hand the mic over to David Knight. Now, this is from, I think, NBC News, CBS News, ABC News. We've got them all saying your children will get microchips soon. Here it is.
Chances are if you have a four-legged family member at home, it's already microchipped. And if the technology exists to save Fido in an emergency, what about microchipping your child? Before you say, no way, I would never do that, hear one mom's story.
It's the longest 2 seconds of your life, and it's absolute panic. I want my son back.
We've seen it in movies.
Let's stop right there.
Over and
so your child's going to be safe if they just get this chip. We're not going to get into how that's all bull. And at the end of the report, they say, so soon, your child will get a chip.
Yeah, they package all of this as to our benefit. And by the way, my definition of this mark of the beast is simply a barcode. It's pretty much the same barcode that a banana at Walmart has. And that's how they see us.
You make yourself a commodity, a human resource.
Exactly.
They even tell you you're a human resource.
Yeah. And if people research the barcode, It begins with a 6. There's a 6 in the center to tell the reader to switch to a different set of information, and it ends on a 6. Did you know that?
I did. It's crazy. In fact, here is the end of the clip. Let's play that.
And guys, this is what we're talking about, the microchip. I don't know if you can see it in my hand. It's the size of a grain of rice, very, very small. And the expert that we spoke with actually tells us that barcodes were introduced in the late 1960s. And back then, people thought, this is way too invasive and too weird. And now barcodes are so commonplace that we don't even think about them anymore. The expert tells us this will happen sooner rather than later.
Well, again, the nice, pretty blonde out there. Keep your kids safe. Take the chip. It's like Eve. Just, you're going to live forever. Just take this, baby.
Yeah. Well, I won't do any blonde jokes on that, but what I will say is this, is that soft-selling death is never, ever, ever received by the people that are buying the lie.
We should make some ads to counter that show an authoritarian future. We got to have it to buy and sell, and what that's like. You know, what would Hitler have done with this?
Exactly. And Alex, we're at the point now where people better recognize it's no longer a conspiracy theory.
World government is here. Stay there. And the film, The Unholy Sea, available now on InfoWarsStore.com and exclusively Amerigeddon. We now are covering The Unholy Sea, of course, with the main host of it being Steve Quayle at InfoWarsStore.com. Let's spend a few minutes on The Unholy Sea. I mean, I've never been a Catholic basher. A lot of great Catholic people. You know, you can have corrupt people as Protestants, whatever, on both sides. But I tell you, now the Pope, I mean, it sounds like the devil. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, he's giving Obama a major run for his money, calling for world government, saying Europe shouldn't be Christian. I want to get a comment from you on that, and then Gary Haven.
Well, first of all, the Unholy See, Alex, was set up to basically show that there's been a tight control over real history and that all roads lead to Rome. When our film crew, Tim Alberino, by the way, did a great job on the writing and the producing of the, I'm the producer, he directed it, but the point being is that the Unholy See, the movie shows the very control of ancient history, which, by the way, is underground tunnel systems, the giants, the cover-up of the history of the giants. And see, the giants are coming back. And that's what's critical, because this is what DARPA's doing. And in the Unholy Sea, we actually have the pilot interview of the gentleman that flew the dead giant back from Afghanistan in 2005. He goes into Bagram Air Force Base, or Bagram, I guess some of them pronounce it. So
a lot of really, really wild stuff in the film.
It's wild, but it's also documented. Tom Horn's on record.
I mean, here you got the pilot. It's crazy.
Yep. Tom Horn is in this, talking about when he went to the Vatican Observatory on Mount Graham in Arizona, the leading graduate observatory specialists in the Catholic Church in the world were openly talking about they had to wait for the unidentified flying objects to clear the field. Now, here's the deal. Whether you believe in this stuff or not, the Catholic Church did Childhood End, the movie that was on the Sci-Fi Channel based on Arthur Clarke. That entity that comes back, the Vatican is saying Jesus Christ is out, but the gods that created us are coming back, and they're the ones that created us from the primordial goo. They're coming back as an intergalactic savior. It's kind of like the Twilight Zone, to serve mankind.
And of course, Arthur C. Clarke was in OSS, inventor of the telecommunications satellite.
2001. I mean,
MI6.
Guy's brilliant. So what was interesting and is fascinating is we document in the Unholy See the underground tunnel system in Peru that went all through the Americas, called the Chincana. And then the Coricancha, which is one of the biggest Catholic church monasteries, if you will, cathedrals in Cusco, Peru. And we get the most famous Peruvian explorer in the world, and he's allowed access at one point and denied it, later on, 8 years later. And he talks about we talk about the megalithic structures. Some of these stones can't be moved today. It's one thing to move them above ground. I mean, you're talking 1,000-pound stones.
But up a mountain.
Yeah, but up a mountain or under the ground, and they're perfectly, basically, they come into such perfect cohesion and perfect support of each other that there's no way it can humanly be possible. I think, okay, I've got people attention, I hope, that if you understand history, ancient history, you'll understand the future.
Well, it's certainly an intriguing film, powerful and available at InfoWarsStore.com. And again, it gets people thinking. And Steve Quayle, you've done it again real fast. Gary Haven, thanks for coming in again. Thanks for bringing this guy.
Yeah, Alex, we're really proud to be here and honored. This product that Steve's created, The Unholy Sea, I've watched it. I endorse it. It's great. And, of course, our movie, Amerigeddon, which you star in, is available now on InfoWars. And we encourage people to buy it and to share it. This movie is important. It's not just a movie. It's a message. It's not just a message. It's a movement. We can take our country back. Alex, thanks to patriots like you, we're giving people hope.
Well, thank you. It's gotten great reviews. No reviews yet on InfoWarsStore.com because it just started shipping out as we speak, exclusively available. And I guess it's next week it finally hits stores?
Well, actually, Walmart's October 4th. But we are offering it through your program and soon through Steve Quayle's. So it's going to be out there and available. Please take advantage. Support these organizations that are fighting the battle for you.
Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. You still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not add up.